Welcome one and all to another episode of Lens of Truth, a series breaking down all things Ocarina of Time. We'll be taking a detailed look at the story, dungeons, towns, mini-games, game mechanics, and way more that Ocarina of Time has to offer, so if you're interested in seeing more after this video concludes, do consider subscribing to stay tuned. On our last episode, we took a bit of a break from the main story quest of the game in order to build on our abilities by visiting 2 great fairies, learning a new song, and even collecting our 4th heart piece, giving us yet another heart container. In today's video, we'll be traveling up Zora's River, entering Zora's domain, and hopefully speaking with the King of the Zoras about getting our hands on the spiritual stone of water he protects. Upon starting our climb up Zora's River, we find Kaepora Gaebora once again. This time, all we're told is that Zora's domain is ahead, and that the Zoras typically only open their doors to outsiders if they're affiliated with the royal family. That's no problem for us though, as we continue to use this royal family messenger title we've been given. Just ahead of us, we find this interesting fellow just chilling upstream, and if we talk to him, he offers to sell us magic beans. He sells them to us for only 10 rupees. These beans can be planted in soft plots of soil like this one right next to us, and just to make sure we're able to plant these in every one of these spots that we find, it's probably best that we buy more to hold on to for now. Every time we buy from him, they cost 10 more rupees than the last time we bought magic beans, so if you're really trying to stock up, do consider gathering some cash beforehand. From here it can be pretty tough to get across the river, so let's just take this cucko. Gently floating over the river to move along, we end up coming across this heart piece high up on a pillar in the center of the stream. I'm pretty sure this heart piece is another that we're meant to collect later on in the story with an item that we don't have quite yet, but forget about that because we can do a nifty little trick to collect it right now. If we take this little cucko with us, we can hover off this cliff and drop it mid-air in order to grab onto this ledge. Once we're here, we can just jump onto the pillar and collect the heart piece. Don't forget to grab your little chicken again though, because it is actually going to come in handy once again later on. Near the end of this river path, we can see yet another heart piece we're meant to get later on, but in an even easier method than we used to collect the last one, we can simply just jump and float to get this one out of the way too. Now we can send our chicken back down the river and say goodbye. Now that we've reached the end of the river path, all that sits in front of us is a huge waterfall. There is a stone on the ground here though, inscribed with this message: "The flow of the waterfall serves the King of Hyrule. When the king slumbers, so do these falls." I guess this is basically what Kaepora meant when he said they wouldn't let us in without some sort of affiliation to the royal family. No biggie, we just play Zelda's Lullaby and the water parts for us no problem. Walking into Zora's domain, it's easy to see that this is the most beautiful town in Ocarina of Time. Everything from the shape of the architecture to the shimmering light bouncing off of the water just makes this such a nice place to look at, and the graceful music goes perfectly along with it. Besides just admiring this place, we do have one order of business here that we need to tend to, and that is speaking with the King of the Zoras. However, all he talks to us about is the fact that he doesn't know where his daughter, Princess Ruto, has gone. This doesn't bode well. The Zoras are missing a princess, and we're most likely gonna have to be the ones putting things back together before we can get any closer to saving the realm with that stone. Regardless, this is what needs to be done, so let's see if there's some way we can help. We can speak to all of the Zoras around Zora's domain, but unfortunately, none of them really give us any information regarding the princess's whereabouts. There is one Zora that tells us Princess Ruto is in charge of preparing meals for Lord Jabu Jabu, and another Zora that tells us all about Lord Jabu Jabu and the fact that he resides in the fountain behind where the King Zora sits. But with the king sitting in the way of inspecting that area, that's about all we're gonna get for now. While we're here though, there is a Zora that offers us to become a master diver like the Zora themselves. He points us towards the top of the waterfall where another Zora will offer us a diving minigame. It costs 20 rupees to participate, but if you're out of rupees from buying magic beans like I was, you can always enter and exit this Zora shop in order to break all these pots over and over and get your money up. In paying for this game, the friendly Zora tosses 5 blue rupees into the water below, telling us to collect them before time runs out. Luckily, this is pretty easy, and rewards you 5 more rupees than you paid to play the game in the first place. But as soon as we've collected them all, we're told from the top of the waterfall to make our way back up in order to obtain our real reward for beating this diving game. Once we've made our way back up, we're given a silver scale that allows us to dive deeper than we were able to before. This silver scale is actually going to prove quite useful, as there's one detail I skipped over from earlier. While we were collecting all of these rupees, it was pretty easy to see this little ornate tunnel hiding underwater, and if we tried to get to it before, there was no way we could dive deep enough. Well, now with our deeper dives, it'll be no problem, so let's check it out. Whoa, okay, it looks like we just found a bit of a shortcut straight to Lake Helia. As soon as we emerge, we're shown a few rupees down on the floor of the lake, as well as some sort of item at the end of the rupee trail. In picking it up, we realize it's actually a message in a bottle. The message inside reads this: "Help me. I'm waiting for you inside Lord Jabu Jabu's belly. Ruto. P.S. Don't tell my father." Oh boy. How are we going to do any of this without telling? We tell her father immediately. In showing the King of Zoras this note, he tells us that this normally wouldn't be possible. Lord Jabu Jabu would never eat the princess, but ever since Ganondorf visited Zora's domain, Jabu Jabu's been acting a little strange. The king then gives us permission to visit Lord Jabu Jabu to attempt to save the princess, as well as giving us the slowest, funniest, and least necessary cutscene in the entire game. Before visiting Lord Jabu Jabu though, are you seeing this torch? Why is this thing lit up? I've come across all sorts of unlit torches throughout this area, and I thought it might have just been too moist in this cave for them to hold a flame, but I guess not. Of course, if we take this flame to every unlit torch in Zora's domain, we can end up opening this chest at the bottom of the waterfall, awarding us with yet another heart piece. That's a new record in this series, by the way, for the most heart pieces we've found in just one episode. We found like 3 brand new ones today just in this area. Okay, let's finally walk past King Zora and visit Lord Jabu Jabu. Once we emerge from the cave at the Zora's fountain, it's pretty easy to see just how large this guy is. It makes a little more sense now how he would have been able to eat the princess. Reading this sign right before Jabu Jabu's altar, we're told not to disturb him while we're here. Honestly though, I don't think disturbing him is even possible. I tried cutting his lips with my sword, I tried shooting his eyes with my slingshot, and I even tried breaking all his pots on this altar, but nothing really seems to bug this guy in the slightest. Just standing in front of him here, there doesn't seem to be a lot we can do to get him to tell us where the princess actually is. Without a clue to chase, we decide it might be best to just search this new area we're in. In doing so, we eventually stumble across this rock beside a wall, and I think by now we've become pretty accustomed to what we're meant to do when we find these. A quick bomb toss blows up the entire wall, and inside this cave we find another great fairy fountain. The fairy here is another great fairy of magic, and this time she grants us a spell called Furor's Wind. Inside any dungeon in this game, we can use this spell to create a warp point. At any point after that, we can cast this spell again to return to the warp point on command. This spell is one of the least used items by me in this entire game in all of my playthroughs, but honestly, I believe it to be quite useful. Perhaps we'll have to try to make use of it next time we find ourselves in a dungeon. As for now, we need to find a way to meet with Princess Ruto inside of Lord Jabu Jabu, but that's gonna have to wait for our next episode of Lens of Truth. If you like videos like these, please consider subscribing to the channel as I put out videos like this every single Friday. If you'd like to check out the episode that came out before this one, or the entire playlist of episodes I've done so far for the series, those will both be on screen now. As for me, that's my time for this week. My name's Myloe, and I'm out.